So this is slightly funny. Out of pure boredom, I've decided to try and install a few games on my test bench. And yeah, I thought, hey, I have all of this hardware lying around all the time. Maybe just try to experience it a little bit more. What is the infamous GTX 480 like? And while I was doing that, I actually went to PlanetSide 2 and played it a little bit. I used to play this game a lot, like a lot. So it's kind of nostalgic to go back to it and kind of fitting with like this older hardware. Now when I started playing this game, the 480 was already kind of old. Like when I started playing this game, I had a GTX 650, but you know, 650 in terms of actual performance might actually be slower than a 480. It has more VRAM. I had the 2GB version. This only has 1.5, and this consumes a whole lot more power. But yeah, I was just like, well, I subjected myself to this game on a 650 back then. So how's the 480 like? And while I was trying to get this game running on a 480, which the 480 can run this game, which is not a big surprise. This game came out like when, 2012? The 480 wasn't that old back then. So yeah, let's just go in. The fan has kicked in by now, as you can hear. that little short burst of just rendering the menu was already enough. So yeah, so we are in game, and as you can see, it is not that great for the frame rate. So let's go to Indar. It just load an actual map. The like orbital station lobby map is kind of like very dense, and kind of a lot smaller. Like yeah, the FPS is slightly better here, but yeah, like this is the game running at high preset, and it is not the greatest. We're topping out at about 45 FPS, and that's when I'm looking into the sky. So we can't really run this game at high settings. And I think we're gonna like... I think as a reference, I'm just gonna look at this Vanu flag right there. So let's look at that. And at high preset we get 33, 34 FPS. Okay. So now let's try making this run a little bit better. And while I was trying to do that the last time, I noticed that there's a new option here that got recently added called upscaling. And when I drop down, I have an option for DLSS. Isn't that interesting? And I can enable it. And let's say set it to performance. And oh, would you look at that, 79 FPS? Is that DLSS running on a GTX 480? That's DLSS running on a GTX 480. So that's a bit interesting. Like you can see the visual quality has completely gone down the drain, but that's DLSS enabled on a 480, and we've like doubled our FPS. We're still running at high settings, like this is still high preset, and like this is, like if I look into the sky, look at that, over 100 FPS now, instead of like 40. Like apart from the very, very low and blocky resolution, this is very playable now. So has Nvidia been lying to us about DLSS only working on 20 series and newer? Has Nvidia actually lied to us about DLSS needing tensor cores on the GPU die in order to work? Well, maybe not, probably not. So this working is probably not intended. And this is very much not what DLSS would look like on any other card that you would try. You can see this is very blocky. Like, there is no upscaling filter at all. This is actually just the game running at a lower resolution. So, yeah, basically what's probably most likely happening here is you know, when you enable DLSS, your game gets rendered at a lower resolution. And then you use the tensor cores in your GPU to upscale it back to full resolution to get, you know, the visual quality that's mostly like native resolution, but you can render more FPS because you're actually only rendering at a lesser resolution. And this card, which doesn't have the physical hardware that's needed to upscale the image back to full resolution, when you enable DLSS on it, or like force enable it through like a glitch, this is probably a glitch, like I don't think the PlanetSide 2 developers were like, oh, let's enable DLSS on the GTX 480 just to make that one guy with his weird YouTube channel happy. Yeah, so what's probably happening here is that the game just doesn't check if your card actually has tensor cores on it, and just lets you enable it anyway. I would actually like to check if maybe you can even enable this on an AMD card. That would be kind of funny. But yeah, so what's happening here is that the card is like trying its best to run DLSS, but because it's missing the physical hardware, it's only kind of like half working. So the part where the game gets rendered at a lower resolution, enabling you to get a lot more FPS, that part works. But the part where you use the tensor cores to scale it back up to full resolution, well, that obviously doesn't work, because this looks a lot more like Minecraft than PlanetSide 2. I can actually give you an example of what it's supposed to look like, because AMD FSR is also an option. So let's set this to performance, just like DLSS, to have a fair comparison. And it's still a bit blocky, but you can see around the edges. There's like a smoothing filter. You can still kind of see the blockiness if I move across it, but if I leave it still, it looks a lot less blocky, because there's just like a smoothing filter. What you can also see is that our FPS just went down by a whole lot, because, well, the card is smoothing something now, instead of just outputting the lower resolution image, so it needs some processing power to do that. And if I set it to quality, well, then we're back to like very not great FPS, but the image looks very sharp again. Something like actually very close to, you know, for resolution. Funnily enough, full resolution actually gets, like, native just gets better FPS. So, I mean, AMD probably didn't optimize FSR for the 480, and the PlanetSide 2 developers probably didn't implement it for a card like this either. So, you know, just kind of performs well at the native. But, you know, DLSS, even if set to quality, you know, that's pretty good FPS. And quality even looks a bit better because, you know, depending on which DLSS quality preset you have, the resolution at which the game is actually rendered changes a bit. So, at the quality preset, you know, you only get like 70 FPS, and you can just above do 100 if you look into the sky, but not like 130 like we did before when looking into the sky. But like, this is still very playable. This is very playable, you know? It's still very blocky because, well, the card's not doing any of the actual upscaling. It's just rendering in a lower image. I would assume this is something like 720p maybe. But the performance jump is quite decent. We're hovering above 60 FPS now. Like, I'm on the capture card right now. I only get 60 FPS anyway. So, yeah, like this is a pretty decent performance. And I don't know, if you like to play this game and have a GTX 480, maybe enable this. Like, at this resolution, I'm willing to take some blockiness. Like, I would play like that. So yeah, like, and the one thing that I'm wondering, because the FPS increase is, like, pretty large. If I just take this and drag it down, like, the actual render quality to, like, 80%. Like, well, that still looks a bit better, and the FPS are not that great. Maybe it's actually, like, down to 50. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is effectively what the DLSS does anyway. So maybe like a little bit more, like 60. Well, that's about what the high preset for DLSS looks like. So, you know, whatever resolution that is, like 70%, 60% of 1080p. That's probably what the DLSS high preset uses here. So yeah, like that's what's happening. The card isn't actually running DLSS, it's running the part of it that's just rendering less pixels. It can't actually do DLSS. So if you were about to scream at Nvidia for locking away a feature that could make, you know, something like a 980 Ti or even a 780 Ti a much longer-lived card, well, sadly, you are in the wrong and Nvidia is in the right. Like, I would have loved to have DLSS working on just any card, but, you know, it's kind of funny that I found this glitch. You know, like, it's technically, it's, you know, not right now, well, you know, technically it's running DLSS, you know, technically it's running DLSS, it's a 480, technically running DLSS, you know, but, you know, it's not actual DLSS, it's not actually working, so, yeah, just kind of a fun video, and, maybe I'm gonna play a little bit of the game now. Because I'm on the capture card, I am locked to 60 Hz, so my input lag is not great. But, you know, I used to play on 60 FPS anyway, so let's spawn in the scythe and, I don't know, maybe go somewhere? Play the game a bit. Oh, can I shoot down that Reaver? Probably not. My aim is terrible. I'm just... Oh, hey, I helped. I shot that guy. I helped. Yeah, this is not a particularly great gaming experience if you're used to like a 2080 Ti and 144 Hz, and now I'm getting shot, and I'm still terrible at flying in this game. So I'm probably gonna die. Is there actually something going on? According to the game, there is. Oh, there's a Sunder right here. Let's maybe... There it is. Hello, I'm helping. Hopefully. No, I'm not. I just... Okay. Yeah, they didn't do that on purpose. But hey, I completed an objective, I guess. That gives me a good opportunity to test what the... No, the Sandra just died. Can I go somewhere else? Oh, the Crown. Well, stuff's always going down at the Crown. Okay, well, you know, we're actually going a little bit under 60 FPS here, so maybe set this, set the... and the card just crashed again. It doesn't like me changing the DLSS settings. What a surprise. Okay, I hoped I would get a little bit more gameplay experience out of this, but it's apparently the card does actually have some issues when I bought it as dead. But yeah, so this marks the end of the video where I show you that DLSS runs on a GTX 480, but not really, actually. It's just a random video. There's not really any... This video only has entertainment purpose. There's no educational part in this. So, yeah, if you have a GTX 480 and want to flex on people with the fact that yours can do DLSS, you can play PlanetSide 2 and prove it to them, though it's only a technicality. Or just, you know, play PlanetSide 2 in general if you want. It's a nice game. It has a few problems, but it's a nice game, I guess. Both sides streams it sometimes. So, anyway, that should be it. It is late, I should go to bed, and I'm gonna do that now. So, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.